It is my pleasure, and I am humbled and blessed to be in a circle of believers where we are looking at how we can offer our services to the world, but also look at how we do that from a viewpoint of ourselves going through our own personal healing and development and growth. And sometimes when those two are running in parallel, they can become intertwined and entangled sometimes. So a part of my work is really looking at how can we connect with the other at the same time that we're looking at healing ourselves and becoming whole and remaining whole in a way that's balanced. And how that presented itself to me is that even from my undergraduate years, and I don't want to take up too much time with that, but just to share briefly, studying psychology and social psychology and how people connect. I'm from the West Coast, from California, different ways of thinking and believing, of course, as there are in all parts of the world, and had the opportunity to live in Europe for a total of about 9 years and experiencing different cultures and counseling individuals because of my graduate work and certifications that just led me to look at why are people wounded? How do they stay in those wounds? But then how can I be an instrument or a vessel to help people move forward in their own way, in their own moment of time? I think as Rich referenced, you're all at a place, we are all at a place as we are meant to be, but we're also meant to be in movement and moving forward. And so that really brought my journey to working with organizations in education and policy and procedures and looking at ways to move communities forward. And that led me to where I am right now in wanting to be more of a specific instrument, a vessel, where I can be totally responsible for who I am and how I choose to engage and who I encounter, and being ultimately responsible for my presence when I'm with those individuals or in a group. And through that is how I went through George Washington University's executive leadership coaching program, which was the Eco Leadership Coaching Program. And it has led me to a very beautiful and inspiring entrepreneurial journey. And I have met and encountered many beautiful souls along this pathway. And I am enjoying it and feeling like I am truly walking in my purpose. And so with that, I share with you, Katerina, that is where I am today to be able to share with everyone and hopefully get us into a good connection as to how we can move forward together. Is that okay? Let me go ahead and share this PowerPoint so we can get started here. Do share screen. And how I'd like to do this based on my conversation with Katerina and a little with Rich is offer this in a way to be a presentation. And when there are times where I need to come out and discuss with you all and have conversation, I'd like to do that. Or Katerina, if you see questions coming up in the chat, I'd like to be able to do it that way as well. So let me go ahead and see. On my screen, I've pressed the PowerPoint mode. Is that what is showing for you all?
Yep. Yes,
Yes,
it is.
that's what we
Great.
see.
Okay, great. So one thing that I absolutely love the new year because it's a time for resetting. It's a time to look at how can we renew? How can we restore? And what do we need to shift and change from? And I am a wholeness coach, a leadership coach, but I am also a change management person with organizations and with individuals. And the only way we can renew and restore and even restrain is we have to be willing to take a look at what are we going to do differently. And it doesn't have to be grandiose. It can be small, very measured and specific steps. But if we look at that, then it leads us to what do I need to take root in my life and what do I need to weed out? And that's where we are today in our discussion. And I'm hoping that together we can look at what will emerge for you in our discussion. And is there a connection between mind, body, and soul for us and how we choose to move through 2024? Can we be more intentional with it? Can we be more specific? Can we name it with each other? Can we own it? And in owning that, we have to be able to talk about what does that feel like? What does it sound like? And what does it move like? And what do I do in that movement? How do I show up and move? So part of that is looking at why are we even here? And it can be as profound as some of you may still be questioning, why am I even here on the planet? I know I'm living and breathing, but what am I really doing? Or it could be very specific about, I am here, I'm moving in this work, and maybe it's not gratifying enough. I haven't felt connected in a long time. And doing that, it allows us to take a look at how we move with specific intention. And then for us that have backgrounds in business as well, it's also looking at, then what's the return on the investment? What's the ROI? And I look at that every day in my own walk, in all of my meetings, all of my plannings, and in all of my engagements. If I am giving of self, as I feel I'm being ordained to do in my purpose, then how is that an investment back? Not just to me because I'm engaging with people, but how does it come back to humanity? How does it come back to the planet? And I'm hoping that today's discussion will help us maybe take a look and discuss some of those that are happening for you right now in this moment in your life. So when taking a look at this, we want to look at how do we ground ourselves. In January, as I work with clients and organizations, it's always a time to say, okay, what are we going to do for the rest of this calendar year? How do we go about planning that? And whether you're on, I say government fiscal year or program academic year, the first of the year, January, is a way to take inventory again and figure out, how do we move? How do we move together? And we know, as those readings pointed out today, that was so beautifully done, we know that we have to talk about our hearts being pure and having a sense of praise and being worthy of feeling as if we are supposed to give and not feeling anxious about what we have to worry about, but also thinking about, how do we give in a way that's joyful, and how do we give in a way that's going to be fulfilling and satisfying for ourselves? So grounding and getting centered gives us a very specific intention. It keeps us soothed. And I'll use this term lightly because I'm a mom of 4 and they're all adults now. But one of the things that we learn about parenting is that we want our children, as we're nurturing them, to be able to self-soothe. And sometimes we don't learn that growing up based on where we come from, based on how we've been um, nurtured and cared for. And as Katarina mentioned, part of my focus is on healing trauma and looking at places of moving forward with individuals who perhaps have been stuck in those spaces of pain and hurt. But if we've never learned how to self-soothe, a lot of times we find ourselves in balls of chaos and unintention, and that can lead to internal feelings being extremely negative, but our engagement with others tends to be very chaotic and sporadic as well. So looking at that and how we can do that a little better today with a really, I think it's kind of a fun exercise. And then centering as a technique that really helps to keep us present right here and right now. We can't worry about tomorrow. We can look forward to it with anticipation and joy if we are seeking that presence of the Lord within us. But then we also have to look at, how do I enjoy this very moment? Seeing your faces on screen, seeing the smiles that come up. Am I right here and enjoying that moment as well? Because that in itself has value as well. And then looking at embodiment, how do I carry that with me? And that song was beautiful. I think Rich mentioned hearing it in Baptist churches, but that little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine. That light from within is so important. How many people do you know where you come up to them and their light is shining? You're drawn to that energy. And that's because we are all a source of energy, and we give those energy signals off. So if we can embody that in self and in mind, it's going to have impact not only on others, but it impacts us. Because one of the things I share and look at with clients and with self is, I can be happy in the moment. That's a trigger switch. I can go out to a nice dinner and feel like I'm really happy, had a great steak and some shrimp, and feel really good. But if I'm joyful, joy is what sustains me by feeling good and nurtured and whole, in the sense that things within me and outside of me keep me in that space of feeling grateful, feeling mindful, and wanting to be of service and to give. The other thing about weeding and rooting is that it's unedited. We want it to be from a space of sharing true feelings and looking at authenticity. And so I'm hoping that the takeaways today will provide some clarity and will help us look at ways where when we recognize we're shifting, how do we use that to work with others in our lives, in our relationships, and in our work? Now, I had stream of consciousness present on the cover slide and what that means. And stream of consciousness is really important for me because as an undergraduate, one of my first loves and hobbies was writing. And I took a lot of creative writing courses, and one professor working with all of these very forward-thinking college students, when we would come into class every day of the week, and it would be maybe twice a week, a Tuesday, Thursday class, before he would get started on what he was going to share with us or teach us that day, he would pull out a piece of paper and simply write. I want you to write for 10 minutes, whatever is on your mind, whatever you're thinking about, and whatever is coming from your heart. I don't want you to edit it. I don't want any grammar. I just want you to write. And based on that, it was letting go of our inner conversations. Some of it was rambling, some of it was intentional. We had things that we had on our mind. But what I love about stream of consciousness is that it talks about expressing our thoughts as they occur. And it's in a structured way in the sense that we're simply writing as it comes forth. But it doesn't have to be in outline form. It doesn't have to be in paragraph form. It can be in bullets, whatever comes forth. And so I use that as a practice with clients and also with myself. And I'm hoping that I can share some of that with you today as well. Katerina, let me check in with you real quick. Do we have anything going on in the chat or anything coming up?
Nothing is just yet.
Okay, that's fine. So one of the things that I also try to do is look at in my own workspace, in my own practice, how do I tap into the energy of the other? If I'm looking at myself, working on self, then I want to be able to use that so that others feel comfortable enough to be in my space. And each one of us can do that in the way we choose to interact with ourselves, and then how that ripples out to others. We can see that as evidence of our practice of being centered and being grounded. So as a coach, what I try to do and what we may want to do as a friend or a coworker is we want to create space for others to feel psychologically safe and emotional safety, to feel as if they can ask a question or find a question. And that doesn't have to be in a coach setting. It can be in any situation where there is a dialogue going on. We also want to make space. So do we make the space, meaning making the time for clients to feel as if they can expand inward so that we can move outward? In your relationships, I use clients here, but in your relationships, are you able to enhance a situation where there is movement for someone to be able to feel as if they can maybe sit in silence and gather themselves, understand what's going on inside, and be able to share that outward? And then, of course, holding that space is to be able to explore the curious, not necessarily having the answer or a solution, but sharing, can we explore this? Can we stay curious about this together and enjoying that? And the biggest piece about tapping into the energy of each other is, can we be a mirror? Can we be a mirror for ourselves? And can we be a mirror for each other? And being a mirror for each other means that we have to be able to see clearly what's in front of me. Do I see self, or do I see something else imposing on self? Or am I allowing that other person to see themselves rather than imposing my thoughts, my desires, my judgments, my opinions? And however way you define what you need to be in the space of being a mirror is where you decide, am I holding space and am I making space? Or am I allowing this space to be a positive disruptor? What do I mean by positive disruptor? I mean, are you allowing a person that maybe is in pain, emotionally, psychologically, or even physically, to express that and feeling as if it's okay for them to express that? And then you being able to be there as a person who can either provide comfort, hold in the sense of holding space and finding resources if it's needed, or just being there to receive that energy so that they're not holding it all themselves, but being able to share it in a way where it's no longer bottled up, but it's part of the space that is. And that space that is, if it can come out, allows that person or even yourself to expand. The best way to look at using this is if you're feeling overwhelmed, if you're feeling frustrated, if you're a little uncertain, or even if you're unfocused or even questioning, where do I go? How do I proceed? I'm in my spiritual connection of praying for guidance, stepping into my faith and operating in that way. But what is it that I need to do to feel that sense of becoming settled and grounded in order to move forward and make that next step in my life, or be present for someone else making a step in their own life? And so I present this to you before we get into some discussion. Here are some practices to tap into the inner. They may seem very simple, but because we're in the new year and getting started on what might we continue, meaning take root, and what might we weed out, I've actually placed about 8 small pictures here. And to quickly name them, this one over here with my cursor, that's a sense of nature, connecting back with the elements of the ground, feeling planted and recognizing that there are things greater than ourselves that we can appreciate and look at that beauty. The next one is looking at, am I at one with the elements and being grounded? Can I connect and find a spiritual connection with the elements that give me a sense of cleansing and clarity? And then this next one might be, is there a ritual or a practice that I do or that I should do every day? I put in here a teacup and a teapot. Every day around 4, I allow myself a break and have some tea. And that tea is about just allowing myself to breathe for what has already been presented that day, but also to give myself a chance to think about, okay, how am I going to close out this day? What do I feel good about? In that sense of just enjoying the aroma of my favorite tea, going into my body in the sense of being in that moment and enjoying that, and using that as a self-soothing opportunity for me to reground myself or whatever is left for that 24-hour block of time. The other one is I put in here golfing. You know, it could be tennis, it could be volleyball, but how do you play? What are you doing to have playtime for you? And in that, how is it delighting your spirit, your mind, and your body when you do that? And we know our bodies are our temple, as we know within the Bible. So how do we honor that? In small steps, if it's just a simple change so that we know we're allowing ourselves that time. And what is it that's going to make us feel comfortable incorporating that into our day, every day or every week, with certain amounts allotted for that? And lower left down here, of course, there's that prayer time and meditation time that's focused on our spirit and our mind and how we use that to connect within our body to be able to move forward and sensing and being in a way that moves us, that guides us, and that helps us to stay grounded. We are beings that are having a human experience. And in this human experience, our being has to figure out, what is it that I need to do to make the most of this time here on the planet and in this shell that's been assigned to me as this body? We didn't pick it. We showed up in it. So in looking at that, that's one of the things we want to look at too. The other thing is, how do we unplug? And are you able to do that? I have many clients and teams within organizations where, especially in the US, this system of go, 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 go is really about us learning how to unplug and disconnect in a way that's healthy for us. And as we move here, what is your sense of service? Is it within volunteering? Is it within the church body? Is it within certain clubs or memberships that you have, but how are you outwardly serving humanity so that it ties into the spirit, mind, and body? How do you give? And how is that being perceived for you and with the groups that you decide to connect with? And then this last one is a sense of community. So that sense of community and breaking bread, sharing a meal, that sense of enjoying the spices and the senses of the cooking and all of that is creating ways to tap into our inner grounding and centering.